The Fighting Illini finished 16th in the new AP poll, but now is when the real work starts for Bret Bielema.
You are Locked On Illini, your daily podcast on the Illinois Fighting Illini. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome one, welcome all to another episode of Locked On Illini. My name is Sunny Verma. You can find me on all the social medias. Do a quick search for Locked On Illini. Send me a message. Say hello. Say something nice. Say something not so nice. Just keep it constructive. Thank you all so much for making us your first listen every single day. If you'd like to support this program, just hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed. We're getting so close to 2,000 subs for this channel. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So early Tuesday morning, the official final rankings of the AP poll came out, and Illinois finished at number 16, which is interesting because they finished right above Alabama. I still think, quite honestly, that Illinois was probably maybe 3 spots too low. But again, I'm not really going to complain. This is the highest the Illini have finished in the final poll since, I believe, 2001, which, of course, was a magical year for us Illini football fans. But what I was thinking about is really now is when the real hard work is going to start for Bret Bielema. A top 16 appearance is something absolutely worth noting, especially in particular for this program at Illinois. But if anything, it's going to build the pressure for this program moving forward. Now, at this point, over the last 3 years, Illinois has had some solid victory totals and slowly seem to be on a trajectory up. Next year, there's going to be 16 starters returning, 18 starters from that bowl game. And so when we already have discussed that schedule that really is relatively easier than the one we just played this year, considering all those starters coming back, you having a senior quarterback in the Big Ten Conference, arguably the best returning quarterback in the Big Ten Conference next year, the expectations are going to be high in Champaign. And it's Bret Bielema's job. It's Aaron Henry's job. It's Barry Lenny Jr.'s job to make sure that Illinois can continue to live up to those expectations, even though it seems every year they get higher. Recruiting-wise, Illinois seems to be off to a very good start in 2026. It's projected to be the best class that Bret Bielema has had since he came to Illinois. But us slipping in 2025, it could have some effects on something like that, right? If all of a sudden Illinois slips up and wins 7 games next year, or even 6 wins, well, you know what? All that positive momentum may slowly start to slip away. We saw that happen just a couple years ago when Illinois started the season. It was 7-1, ultimately finished 8-5, so close to representing the West in the final Big Ten championship. But they faltered, and Purdue took their place, and that was the year where they squandered an opportunity to get some decent recruiting momentum and really build up what the perception of this program is. Well, again, Bret Bielema as a 10-point underdog against the South Carolina Gamecocks upset South Carolina, a team that many considered the best team not in the college football playoff. And Bret and Illinois kind of caught the attention of a lot of the college football world there. And you already kind of see the hype building on social medias right now. I saw a post, I believe it was the Big Ten Huddle, say that, hey, any preseason ranking that doesn't have Illinois in the top 10 should be invalid. Again, we've discussed this, all the returning starters, the senior quarterback, a schedule that isn't going to be as tough as it's been in years past. The expectations are rising in Champaign. I'm grateful that I do think we have the right guy in charge to live up to those expectations. I don't think he shies away from high expectations. If anything else, Bret Bielema has shown that he is embracing it. He talks about this constantly, that he hates how Illinois fans seem to hold on to the baggage of the past. Bret Bielema hasn't been here for the last 80 years when Illinois was, again, an unremarkable football program. And yet, we seem to constantly bring up stats that show just how inept and how not very good the football team has been in years past. And he's constantly said this in interviews that, hey, at some point, Illinois fans just need to let this go. And Bret's the first coach in a very long time who seems to be on the verge of letting these things go. I mean, think about it. If over the last 3-4 years, as the win totals continue to go up, these high school players, these local high school players, aren't used to a 500 Illinois football team, aren't used to a team that just constantly squandered expectations and would just hope to be a bowl team. No, these high school seniors who basically played 4 years in high school now, they recognize that Illinois as a team that does win 8 games, that did just come off a 10-win season, a win where they beat an SEC foe in the Citrus Bowl. The perception of Illini football is growing by the year. And at the conclusion of one of their most successful seasons in a very, very long time, what it does, it sets the foundation for next year. And next year, whether we start off in the top 20, top 15, or even the top 10, the key is going to be to try to stay there. The key is going to be try to continue to stay there. Illinois has a really good thing going, but Illinois football and Bret Bielema has a potential to have a great thing going. All eyes on you, Bret Bielema.
From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets. Guaranteed, that's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Again, thank you for tuning in to Locked On Illini. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We're getting so close to 2,000. And I'm really hoping that we can hit that number by the end of January. On Monday night, the college football final finally occurred, and Ohio State proved themselves to be the champion. And to talk about that, I, of course, am going to be bringing on a Big Ten Ted from the Big Ten Ted YouTube show. Ted, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Good to be here. I can't believe we're at the off season already. This is, it's, for fan bases like someone like in Illinois or some of these fan bases that have played their bowl game. Yeah, it's been the off season for a while, but now it's like officially official. There's no more college football on television anymore. So now we're here. We are in the heart of winter here where the BTT headquarters are in Minnesota. It is like minus 15 degrees. So it is that time of year where you just like, it's January, it's February. You got to hunker down and you got to find your content anywhere you can get it. And this is where you're going to find it, right? Even throughout the off season. So it's fun to always be on here. It's fun to talk some Big Ten football.
Absolutely. And we will talk about Ohio State and Notre Dame in a little bit. But Ted, I want to, kind of get your viewpoints about that first segment. Obviously Illinois finishes at number 16. Mm-hmm. This is very much an Illinois-centric show, of course, but you cover the conference, as a whole. So I'm curious on your thoughts on what, the perception of Illinois football is, not just at the conclusion of this season, but also, kind of where the expectations might be next year.
Oh, they got expectations. I'll tell you that much. I mean, you're looking at some of these way too early top 25s, which there's a reason why they're called way too early, because they are way too early. But you have some people look in Illinois within the top 10 in the country. But a lot of that can come down to what Bret Bielema said in that post-game interview against South Carolina. He's like, yeah, we're looking to use this as a jump to a possible college football playoff next season. And when you look at what Illinois is coming back, an experienced quarterback. Okay, when you look at these last two national champions, J.J. McCarthy was an experienced quarterback. Will Howard was a very experienced quarterback, right? Experience at the quarterback position is so huge. And Luke had a great year this season. And to be able to build on that, of course, he's going to look to do that. And they've got some good players coming back on defense. You look at Gabe Jacas is coming back. On the offensive line, J.C. Davis is coming back. Man, if Caden Fagan can stay healthy, this kid can be a 1,000-yard back. He's just got to stay healthy, and he can accomplish that. He's really good. He's really talented. We saw that a couple of years ago. I remember what was that, the Minnesota game, where he was really good, I think 2 years ago in Minneapolis. So like we know he can be really good as well. And then when you have Bret Bielema coaching a football team, you know you're going to get the best out of that particular squad. So I think that this is an Illinois team that when you're looking for what was the Indiana of 2024, I think Illinois is right there. I think Illinois is right there. I think you're always going to have the usual players in the Big Ten. You're always going to have Ohio State. You're always going to have Penn State. You're always going to have Oregon. I think Michigan is going to jump back into that fold, certainly.
Sure.
But who are going to be those next teams, right? Who is maybe going to be the fourth college football playoff team from the Big Ten? I think there's I think Illinois is going to be sitting right there. And now, you look at Illinois coming into this year, people are saying, yeah, maybe they'll make a bowl game. Maybe they'll do this. Maybe they'll do that. But there were some people that picked them to go 4-8, bottom of the conference, stuff like that. Now, all of that, I think, is going to go out the window this offseason. Now, how is Illinois going to adjust having expectations? Here's one thing to keep in mind. When they had that great year with all that NFL talent back in 2022, they lost said NFL talent. They lost defensive coordinator Ryan Walters at that time. So I think a lot of people were maybe expecting Illinois to take a little bit of a step back. There wasn't maybe a ton of returning production where, well, hey, all of a sudden, hey, these guys are coming back and now there's big expectations. But then you look at this team, it's a little bit different where you have the impact players. I know you're losing some stuff at wide receiver, which we've talked about throughout the season. But now you have a lot of those key pieces that are returning. This is a little bit different for the Bret Bielema era at Illinois. But if we know anything about Bert, he's going to have these guys ready to go, right? He is all in. He's going to be dialed in. He's going to be focused. So I'm looking forward to seeing Illinois this next season. Illinois hosting Ohio State in 2025. That could be like I'm going through the schedule now after the season's over. I'm like, oh, circle that game. And that Illinois game is certainly one that's very, very intriguing, certainly to me. So, yeah, this is a team that's going to have a lot of expectations, and we'll see how they deal with it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that Ohio State game. That's going to be a Verma family Civil War game. I've already gotten my tickets to Champaign next year, so that's going to be fun for me and the family. But just speaking about Bret Bielema, I've talked about this on this show itself. Like, I know outside fan bases might just see him and on social media and think he's crying or whining or whatnot, but I truly think that Bielema from the beginning just understands the college football world today, and he's been playing the long game. Complaining about not being in the college football playoff this particular year, or even campaigning to be in it, in that final at the end of the regular season, I think was just to consistently put Illinois out there. Even if other fan bases were talking about Illinois, like, what are you talking about? No, you shouldn't have lost to Minnesota. You shouldn't even be in the conversation. I think Bret's ultimate point was to be in a conversation, in the conversation. And then, of course, the 10-point underdog upset against South Carolina. And afterwards, seemingly every week, he's tweeting. He's paying attention, right? He's looking at everyone's too early preseason rankings, and he calls out, I believe it was some writer who had South Carolina ahead of Illinois in their preseason ranking, and he's like, did you just not watch that game on New Year's Eve? But it's just Bret understanding what it takes to elevate Illinois as a program, because you and me might be having this conversation,
right.
But if Illinois and the Illini aren't mentioned as often as they are because of Bret and sometimes his quote-unquote outlandish takes, they could just be a team that's just kind of forgotten, not thought about, not given credit for, just because Illinois is going to be Illinois. But I do think, at least in particular at the end of this past season, Bret had the national media say the name, discuss the name, even if it wasn't to the point of, hey, yeah, they should be in the college football playoff, but, kind of like on an outside looking in, because that can carry over to next year. And next year is the year where I've talked about it. You and I have talked about it. The schedule is softer than it was in previous years. 16 of 22 starters returning, 18 of the 22 from the bowl game. The expectations are going to be high, but Bret has set them up in the sense where if they reach those expectations, the national media is going to be paying a lot more attention.
Yeah, like you said, Bret is certainly trying to put his team on the map. He's like Walter White, say my name, right?
Exactly.
When it comes to the college football playoff scenarios next season. And, at a place like Illinois, hey, big props to Andy Staples and some of those people that put Illinois 7th, 8th, 9th, wherever in these two early top 25. When it comes to it, when the AP kind of sets their mark to start the season, I don't think they're going to be a top 10 team. And sometimes it's all about where you start, right? If Illinois gets a better starting spot out of the blocks in 2025, it's going to help them maybe if they take a loss that they're not supposed to later in the season, next season. That can certainly help them out. So, and that's kind of the thing that's a little bit flawed about the preseason top 25. We don't know anything about these teams. I mean, we know recruiting rankings. We think, we a lot of these reporters, they go in and watch practice and spring, but in terms of a real game, we don't know anything. We don't know anything. So if you can get a better starting spot right out of the gate, that's certainly going to help you for a potential college football playoff spot. And I think Bret knows that. And he's got a very dry sense of humor. I love his sense of humor in all of this. And one last thing, I think maybe before we move on is, but how did these bowl committees not pit up Illinois and Ole Miss in a bowl game? Right, we had so many Big Ten and SEC ties. What a major missed opportunities!
It was right there.
You've had Lane and Bert going back and forth on Twitter. Believe me, don't get me wrong. I love the interaction with Shane Beamer in their bowl game in the Citrus Bowl. That was great television. But man, what a missed opportunity to have Ole Miss and Illinois. I think they both had 9-3 records. I believe.
Yeah.
For the Rebels there. So it was certainly, they were on the same level to be paired with in a bowl game, but hey, we'll maybe have to save it maybe for a playoff game next year. Who knows?
All right. Yeah. The playoffs are going to hopefully be the ideal goal for Illinois next year. But right after this, we'll talk to Ted about the conclusion of the playoffs that occurred on Monday night and what it could mean for the Big Ten moving forward. This message is brought to you by PrizePicks, the place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings, PrizePicks has changed the game in daily fantasy sports. Whether it's the playoffs or regular season, PrizePicks has made it easier than ever to win big while enjoying all the football action. Now it's playoff time. There's no better way to get in on the action than PrizePicks. Here's how it works. You simply pick more or less on at least 2 players. And if your pick hits, you could win up to 1,000 times your cash. That's right, 1,000 times your money just by making a few simple picks. Ready to run your game this football season? Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 just for playing. Don't wait. Take your game to the next level with PrizePicks. PrizePicks. Run your game. All right, Ted. So the opening drive from the college football final, had Notre Dame, just a textbook, beautiful drive with Riley Leonard scoring a touchdown, 7-0. Irish probably opened up a couple eyes, and then you got Ohio State being Ohio State, and it looked like it was turning out to be the game that we all expected it to be. And then the Irish come back, make a little run at the end, but ultimately, in my opinion, the best team in college football won the national championship. And I'm not just saying that. My everydayers in here know I've been saying that since early December, and I have a plus 850 ticket that I cashed on last night to prove it. But what do you think of the Buckeyes, game last night and just their season as a whole?
Yeah, you look at that game, and they, like you mentioned it, Notre Dame kind of bullied them a little bit on that opening drive. They ran the football, and this was a Notre Dame team that had replacements on their offensive line, so they weren't completely full strength. They weren't 100%. It seemed to me Notre Dame came out and they threw a big old haymaker, and they were looking to stun Ohio State a little bit and kind of get them on their heels a little bit with that opening. What they ran Riley Leonard like 7 or 8 times just on the opening drive. Just insane. And you saw Riley. I mean, he even looked a little bit banged up on that first drive of the game, and with all of that game left in front of them at that point. So they threw that haymaker and hoping that would really set the tone for the rest of the game. But Ohio State, man, they were not stunned. They stayed on their feet. And they're hitting jabs and drive after drive after drive after drive, and they're going down, scoring touchdowns. They're converting third downs. They did not fail on a third down until something like 7 minutes left in the third quarter. They started off 7 for 7. It was very demoralizing, both physically and mentally, for this Notre Dame defense to keep allowing those first downs and not in key situations and not be able to get off of the field. And then Ohio State just kept on doing it. They just kept on doing it in a variety of ways. Will Howard, he's the heartbeat of this team. It's him and Jack Sawyer probably the heartbeat of this team in so many ways. And he just had a Will Howard game. He was just extremely efficient, didn't make a ton of mistakes. And there's the thing, he actually led Ohio State in rushing attempts. I thought when this season started that Will Howard, you kind of saw what they did with him at Kansas State, a lot of QB design run over there. And it makes sense because look what K-State had with Avery Johnson afterwards. It was really a part of their offense. I thought he would come in, and then you have Chip Kelly, right? And you kind of look at what Chip was able to do when he was the head coach at Oregon. They did, of course, some zone reads, some QB run type of stuff. You thought he'd really be involved a little bit more. But I guess when you got Trevion Henderson and Quinn Judkins in the backfield, you don't have to do that as much. But this game, they kind of harnessed that a little bit. Will Howard made some big runs, bouncing it to the outside on third down to be able to keep some of these drives moving, which I thought was huge for them in the end result. But you got to give big props to Notre Dame. Down 31-7, they kept on coming back and made this a one-possession game in the end. Here's the thing about Notre Dame is that prior to this season, they've really had a narrative about them when it comes to postseason bowl games, when it comes to really these big-time postseason matchups. They fall flat, right? It's happened against Ohio State in a postseason matchup before as well. So, but they beat the SEC champions in the quarterfinals. They beat the Big Ten runner-ups in the semifinals, and they take the eventual, of course, national champions to the brink, being able to come back. I think Marcus Freeman is really transforming what Notre Dame is and what Notre Dame has been over the past. But, like you said, I think that you're right. This was the 12-team format. It was great this year because it presented to us the best team was the national champion. Mm-hmm. In a BCS format or a 4-team format, specifically the 4-team format, they wouldn't have been in that thing, right? They would have been thinking about that Michigan loss for this whole season. They would have played in a New Year's Six game. I'm sure a good amount of guys would have opted out of that game. But the beauty about the 12-team format is if you're the best team, you're going to be able to prove the best team. Ohio State had that opportunity, and what a job for Ryan Day. This was a legendary run. Backs were against the wall, and you can say all the things that you want about Ryan Day, but what he and this team was able to do after that Michigan loss, to be able to rally the troops and go on this legendary run, beating all of these great teams, absolutely demoralizing Tennessee and Oregon in the first 2 games of their playoff run, and then big plays to get it done against Texas and Notre Dame. This was it was a great team. I think it was the best team in the country all year long. But this game was kind of a lot like their season in some ways. That was absolutely undeniable at times. There were bumps in the road, right? Mm-hmm. At times. I think this season and this Buckeye team proved that you can have the best talent. And this is there's going to be a ton of NFL players drafted off of this team. Sure. And you're going to have guys that are going to have 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year careers in the National Football League. They're going to be Pro Bowlers. There's going to be really good players that are going to come off of this team. But I think the current format of college football, 12-game regular season, a conference championship, and this playoff run, you're going to have teams as talented as this win championships that going to have 2 losses. Okay, so I think teams are going to play that into how they approach the season. It's okay to lose early in the year. It's even okay to lose at the end of the year. I mean, look what Ohio State was in that game against Michigan. You just need to harness and whatever you need to do to make that playoff run. College football becoming more like the NFL. Ohio State kind of proved that model. It says, hey, We got to be able to use this regular season how it ended and turn it around when it comes to the postseason. And they certainly turned it around. So congratulations to the Buckeyes. That's back-to-back Big Ten championships, 2023 Michigan, 2024 Ohio State, as if that rivalry didn't need more juice. You've got the last two national champions coming from the game. So it's a lot of fun. And, obviously congratulations to them. What a year. And we'll certainly see what happens next year.
Yeah, as you mentioned, back-to-back champions from the Big Ten Conference.
Yep.
I'm curious, just kind of as a season wrap-up,
yep.
What kind of thoughts you just had on the Big Ten, not just this season, but maybe even, moving forward?
Yeah, so I thought, you look at the final AP poll, you've got Ohio State at number 1, of course. Oregon sits there at number 3, Penn State at number 5. So you got 3 out of the top 5, 4 out of the top 10, if you include the Hoosiers that finished at number 10 in that poll. The Big Ten is as strong as they've been in my lifetime. Or maybe this is... Yeah, I think this is as strong as that. They've had really good seasons here and really good seasons there, but back-to-back national champions. They obviously Ohio State won a title in 2014. They won a title in 2002 in a Big Ten team. Did not win a championship between then. So now you go back-to-back, and now the playing field, everybody talks about this, has been leveled with portal stuff, with NIL stuff. I'm sure with rev sharing, it's going to continue all this offseason. It's going to continue to be leveled. But as the Big Ten goes forward, teams need to know this is going to be a grind. It is going to be the toughest league. It's going to be the toughest schedule in college football. As I look forward to next season, Ohio State's going to lose a ton of guys. They're going to lose everybody off of that defensive line, right, which is going to be huge. They're going to lose Trevion Henderson. TBD on Judkins. We'll see on that. Quarterback, they're going to lose Will Howard. Julian Sand is in the mix. Don't think they'll start a true freshman, but they got a really good one in Tavian St. Clair in the next few years as well. But here's the thing about Ohio State. You're still going to have Jeremiah Smith. You're still going to have Caleb Downs. Right. I think they're still going to be in the mix. But this is a team that's going to lose a lot next season. Are they going to be in a national championship conversation, Big Ten championship conversation? That remains to be seen. Penn State is kind of that team that we've seen from 2023 Michigan, 2024 Ohio State. They've taken their lumps in the postseason, and they bring a lot of impact players back. And I talked about this about a week or so on the channel, on the podcast feeds. Aller's back tonight. Dennis Sutton's back. Katron Allen is back. Nicholas Singleton is back. Mm-hmm. Wide receiver room is going through a little bit of a shift right now, and that's something that obviously needs to get better out there. But that's a team that brings a lot of impact players back. If you're looking for a team that is looking to run it all the way back, Penn State could possibly be that team. Oregon, of course, is going to be in that mix as well. How good is Dante Moore going to be now plugging in at quarterback? That's going to be a good question, but they're going to be in that conversation, certainly. You look at someone like in Indiana, okay, Fernando Mendoza comes in from Cal at quarterback. Roman Hemby from Maryland, he had a really good, I think, his first year starting, and then the last 2 years, maybe not as good, but he's coming in at running back, and they lose some pieces, but they also bring back some other key pieces. So we'll see what Cignetti can. Obviously, we talked about Illinois in there as well, and then you got a lot of questions. But those are kind of some of the teams that I feel confident about that can have good seasons to great to maybe elite seasons next year. Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, Illinois, Indiana are probably some of the teams kind of towards the top of the Big Ten, certainly right now. You're going to have a team that's going to surprise. I don't know who it's going to be, but we still got to finish this portal period. We still got to go into spring. We still got to go in the spring portal. There's a lot that can happen. But those are kind of the teams that I feel good about right now that I think are going to be able to certainly be up there and make a run. But with as much money that is invested into these Big Ten programs, there's going to be someone out there that's going to be like, we can be this year's Indiana. I think Michigan, I'm not, it's weird to say, yeah, Michigan is going to be this year's Indiana because historically you look at those two programs, I'm like, oh, that's a weird comparison. But Michigan has an easy schedule. They don't have Oregon on the schedule. They don't have Penn State on the schedule. They don't have
Illinois on the schedule.
Illinois on the schedule. Like, and you see what they've been able to do and the talent that they've been able to bring in. I know they got Mikey Keene. They might roll the freshman quarterback, of course, with Bryce Underwood, but that's going to be a team that I think is going to be right in the thick of it. I think that's going to be a team that's probably at minimum going to win 8 or 9 games next season. So that's a pretty darn good top 6. And then who knows if some of these teams like the USCs or the Nebraskas really start to turn this thing around. So it's going to be a fun offseason. I'm looking forward to it. There's all kinds of stuff to break down here coming up. But this is like a fun time of year where you can kind of see some of these rosters kind of turning and flipping in a different way. And then we've got this thing called rev sharing that is completely new for everybody. Yeah. And, look what's going on at Wisconsin, right? They're in the thick of it right now with that whole Miami situation with Xavier Lucas. So it's going to be an absolutely very entertaining, very fun offseason. There's going to be plenty to talk about.
Exactly. The college football season may be over, but doesn't mean the Illini football coverage and the Big Ten coverage is over. We've got a lot to talk about this offseason. Ted, again, before I let you go, please let the folks know where they can find your content.
Sure. At Big Ten Ted over there on Twitter, the podcast feeds, YouTube as well, Spotify and Apple for the podcast feeds over there. And there's a lot to break down coming up on said podcast feeds and said YouTube channel. We're going to be talking about some big takeaways from the season. We're going to be looking at very soon. I'm going to be breaking down some of the biggest impact transfers through the winter portal period. We're like 90% probably wrapped up. I think a lot of the significant guys are probably wrapped up in the portal. So I think it's probably time to kind of talk about that. And then, there's a lot of others things kind of coming up down the road as well. So stay tuned. There's going to be a lot to talk about. So looking forward to bringing it to everybody.
Best in the world, Ted. See you next week.
All right. Sounds good.
And that's going to wrap it up for this edition of Locked on Illini. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, Maryland on Thursday, Northwestern shortly thereafter that. I'll have a couple previews up for the Maryland game. I'm trying to contact a Maryland writer, and hopefully we'll learn a little bit more about Derek Green and the Terps for that big matchup on Thursday. Just make sure you're locked in right here on Locked on Illini. Until next time, ILL. Love you guys.